everyone, and welcome to this week's 10-Minute 2-Tip Tuesday. I'm Amelia Borland, occupational therapist and owner and founder of Higher Standards Caregiver Training. And you might be wondering why I have my helper sitting here today with me like this. And it's because we're going to be talking about a really, really important safety issue related to eating, okay? But before we get started, for anyone who has not watched 10-Minute 2-Tip Tuesday here before, let me give you a quick rundown of what's going to happen. So I'm going to give you 2 super valuable tips in 10 minutes. The first is for caregivers, and the second is always for caregiving organizations. And these are designed to be high impact, high value pieces of information that you can get quickly and then move on with your day. Another super important thing to know before we get started though, this is for educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for a therapeutic relationship or assessment or treatment by a licensed healthcare provider. So if anything that I say reminds you of someone who you think needs to be assessed and treated by a licensed healthcare provider, then please make sure that you are advocating for that person to get the appropriate contact with that provider and to get that appropriate treatment, as this is really and truly for educational purposes only. Okay, so let's cut straight to it. Tip number 1 for caregivers today. So there are kind of two parts to this tip, even though it's only one. And I'm gonna go over the real tip, the most important piece of information that I want you to walk away with here today. The real tip is that if you think someone has a swallowing issue, don't take it into your own hands to try to either diagnose or correct that issue. Okay, so often there's actually a lot that we can do a lot of the times to help people have a safer swallow. But it's not a one-size-fits-all blanket solution. It's very, very important that when we think someone might have a swallowing problem, that they are assessed by an expert in swallowing and swallowing intervention in order to make sure that one, that swallow problem, if it's there, is being correctly diagnosed, and 2, to make sure that the right intervention is being provided to make that swallow safer. So that's the most important part of this tip today, is that if you think someone is having a swallowing problem and you are a family caregiver or a non-medical professional caregiver, don't take it into your own hands to try and either diagnose or treat this problem. Make sure you let someone know right away who can effectively get an expert into a licensed health care provider in to assess that potential swallow issue and make the right recommendations. I can't overstate the importance of this because swallowing issues can literally be life and death. Not just because, of course, someone can choke, their airway can be blocked, and they can, die quickly in that moment, but also because when people have swallow problems, they can be at a very high risk of aspirating, which is when some of the food or the drink that someone is trying to consume accidentally goes down into their lungs. And that's a huge cause of pneumonia, which we don't want people to get for all kinds of reasons. So again, this is the most important part of this tip, is that we want this to be evaluated and treated by a licensed healthcare provider. Okay, going on to the second part of that though, what are some common signs that someone might be having a swallow problem? I want to review a couple of the really common ones here with you today. So one very common sign that someone might be having a problem with a safe swallow is if they are coughing a lot while they are eating or drinking or after they're eating or drinking. So we've all had that sensation of having something going down the wrong pipe and we start to cough, right? This is essentially the same thing. So if you're caring for someone, if you're working with someone who after they're eating or drinking or while they're eating or drinking, you notice that they're coughing a lot or even trying to really just clear their throat a lot, that can be a sign that someone might have a problem with a safe swallow. Another really common sign that someone might have issues with safe swallowing is if they have kind of gurgling or a very wet voice, kind of a wet or gurgly sounding voice after they've been eating or drinking. So, again, someone, if after they have a meal, if after they have a snack or something like that, you notice that their voice sounds kind of wet, it sounds kind of gurgly when they're trying to talk and unclear, that can be another sign that someone may have an issue with safe swallowing, and it's something that you want to report right away, because again, it can make a huge difference in someone's health and well-being, and even can be a life or death situation. So we want to tell someone about that quickly. Okay, so that was tip number 1 for caregivers. Moving on to tip number 2 today for caregiving organizations. So what I hope tip number 1 kind of highlighted for any organization leaders who might have been watching is the importance of training your caregivers. So often, and running a caregiving organization can be so hectic. It can be so demanding. There can be fires that you're putting out all the time, all over the place. It can be really overwhelming and chaotic. And so a lot of times what happens is things that aren't essential and necessary right in this moment, things that aren't fires needing to be put out, they get put on the back burner, right? And so often, despite someone's best intentions, despite an organization's best intentions, the thing that ends up getting put on the back burner is caregiver training. And that happens for all kinds of reasons, right? Again, it's not the fire that needs to be put out right now. It can be time consuming to do. It can be hard to manage it on your own to make sure that your caregivers are actually engaged and that it's being done effectively. But what I really want to share today and emphasize is the fact that when you are a leader in a caregiving organization, or you are a caregiving organization, what you are providing is care. And the quality of your care can only be as good as the knowledge of your caregivers. So training is one of those things that really can't be put on the back burner. It can't be set aside and thought of as something to be taken care of later. It has to be an essential process, an essential function of your business. Because without having high quality training, without having training that your caregivers are engaging in, without having training that goes over more than just basic safety skills during a transfer, which of course, don't get me wrong, very, very important. And at Higher Standards Caregiver Training, we cover everything from those basic transfer skills all the way up to some of this, higher level information that caregivers need to know. But we have to be providing training to our caregivers that is going to support the health and welfare of our clients. It's going to support the health and welfare of our caregivers, and then will also support the health and welfare of the organization. And to do that well, we have to be intentional about it, and we have to make it a priority. So that's my tip for caregiving organizations today, is make training, high quality training, impactful training, a priority in your organization. And the wonderful thing that will happen as you do that is you're also going to see that there are less of those fires to put out. Okay, so that's it for me for today's 10-minute 2-Tip Tuesday. I hope that you enjoyed watching today. I hope that you got some valuable information out of it. Couple of things coming up on May 27th. The Caregivers Dilemma podcast, that is the podcast from Higher Standards Caregiver Training, is officially going to be launched on the Whole Care Network. So shortly here, I'm going to be sending out a little teaser of the podcast that you can listen to. And then on the 27th, it's going to be launching, and there's going to be a bunch of episodes available. So make sure you're looking out for the Caregivers Dilemma podcast. Oh my goodness, my phone is ringing, and that's what happens when you're actually live. Whoops. Okay, and then the other thing real fast is that, again, I'm working on making the recordings of the Fall Prevention series available for folks. So when that becomes available, I will let you all know ASAP. Okay, that's really it for me today. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it. Until next Tuesday, y'all, please Be healthy, be well, and make sure that you take care. Bye, y'all.